morning to all of you. This is Tel Aviv, very early in the morning before the rush hour. I'm going to take some video about Moshe's life in the beginning of his work and afterwards when he was doing the training here in Tel Aviv. Just look at the site, at the very empty road, because in another half an hour or something like that, it won't be able to drive that quickly. See you in the first site where Moshe landed in the land of Israel when he was about 14. You won't recognize it as a very, very young city in the sands by the sea, but that's what we can show you about 100 years later. See you in a few minutes in the first place that I can show you where Moshe worked when he was in Tel Aviv, a very young boy of 14 years old. See you. Just look at that beautiful city coming to you. For years and years, Tel Aviv is being built. On our left, it's actually another city called Ramat Gan, and on the right, it's Tel Aviv. When I was a young child, over here, actually there was like some kind of a stream running to the left. When Moshe was here, it was all actually sands, and in the winters there were floods over here. We can't even imagine how it looked like at the time. When Moshe came to the land of Israel after World War I, all this part of Tel Aviv was just growing and being built. In this, as you can see, we have a very old building, and I'll move the camera a bit. You can see we have very old buildings here that are being renovated. And on this spot where there's a very tall building called Migdal Shalom Meir, Tower of Shalom Meir, stood the high school where Moshe finished his formal education when he was quite older. He wasn't already in high school age, but he thought he should finish the formal education, and here is where he studied. In the 60s or the 70s, the high school was taken down and this tower was built up. And you should remember that Tel Aviv, after the World War I, just started to build, and in this place, people from all around the world came. People came from Russia, from Germany, from Hungary, from Romania, from many, many countries. Jewish people came because after World War I, there were many riots against Jews in Europe, and many Jews decided to come to Israel. So not only from Europe, but also from Yemen and from other South African countries, and also from wherever there were Jewish people came to Israel. And Tel Aviv was actually a very multicultural city. Not a very big city, but it was a very multicultural city. And I have to move because a car is coming, so I'm moving, and I'm looking for a parking place. It's 6 a.m. in the morning, and there's no parking place in Tel Aviv. I just wanted you to look at these buildings in the street Nachalat Binyamin, also a very old street in Tel Aviv. When Moshe came to Israel, as I said, there wasn't anything here but sand. And Moshe lived very close to here in another street. If I want to find a parking place, I'll have to show you just by car. Lived in this street on a tent, like many other young people who came to Israel. Look at the buildings. You can see that some of them are very old, yet they are actually being renovated. And this is the street where there was a very large tent camp where Moshe used to live as a young boy. He was 14, as I said, when he came to Israel. And with many other young boys, he used to live here and find all kinds of works, whatever they could find. And because Tel Aviv was being built at the time, he used to work as a builder, as a mason. I don't know exactly what he did do. I know many people who came at the time worked like that. Also my grandfather, my husband's grandfather, they all came very early and they just built this country. I'm here under the Tower of Shalom, trying to get to the street where there's a building that Moshe was one of his builders. I just wanted you to see the old building here and the new buildings. This is Tel Aviv. All the new, everywhere. This is not a professional video. I'm just trying to show you, to give you some atmosphere about 50 years of Feldenkrais trainings. And it's not a professional video. We're trying to do other things much better, but this is what we can find, we can do early in the mornings. I'm looking at the building myself. It's so beautiful. I love it. So beautiful. Everything is very close to one another because Tel Aviv was a very small city at the time. Now I have to look for a parking place. Maybe I will find even one. No, you cannot have a park here. I just want you to look at the buildings again. It was all built during the 20s and the 30s. But Moshe was here in the beginning of when they started building Tel Aviv, and most of it was dunes of sand, as I said. As you can understand, I found a parking place. It's very hot today and very humid. That's one of the reasons I left the house that early in the morning, because I just said I can't do it when it's too hot. But it can help you see the beauty of the streets, because usually you can't see it. It's very noisy and lots of cars, and you can't see anything. As I said, it's 6:30 a.m. already. And I'm on my way to show you a building that Moshe used to build when he was a child, actually. On many buildings there are signs like that. This says, you can read it maybe. Trucks are now in the streets of Tel Aviv. And as I said when I was driving here, Tel Aviv is still being built all the time. They take down one house and they build a very, very tall other building, very modern. Now I cross the street. And behind that tree, the big tree, stands the big synagogue of Tel Aviv. The central synagogue of Tel Aviv. And that's the building that Moshe helped building when he was a teenager. It was very important to the people of young Tel Aviv to build a central synagogue. Nowadays, there aren't many prayers done here because Tel Aviv is not a very religious city. But in the 20s of the 20th century, it was important to them to build the central synagogue. And many, many young children, young teenagers, helped building buildings at the time. Moshe was one of them. I'm walking now because even though it's so early in the morning, it's difficult to find a parking place. So you'll watch the streets of Tel Aviv with me. I'm taking you to Nachmani Street, the street where Moshe gave the training. Look at that building, how beautiful it is. I'm not sure at the year it was built. I think it says it was built on 1926, 1926. This building is from 1926. The letters are in Hebrew and I have to translate it into numbers, but the letter says which year it is. Every building here has a story. So I'm taking you to Nachmani Street, the place where Moshe used to live and where he actually gave his first training. Moshe left the land of Israel in the beginning of 1931, after he wrote a book about self-defense for the Haganah. The Haganah was one of the organizations that were trying to make the British leave Israel, undergrounds that try to make the British leave Israel. And he wrote a book about self-defense, because at the time there were many problems with the Arabs here in Israel. Look at that street. And he left Israel to Paris to study physics and to do his PhD. And then he stayed for 20 years in Europe till 1951. I don't know why we have these flags on this building. Maybe someone has some kind of an idea. Tel Aviv, a very interesting city. This is Rothschild Boulevard. Actually, this is almost the first street that was built in Tel Aviv. It's on Nachmani Street yet. You know, when you do things by car, you think it takes 2 minutes, and then when you walk it, you find it's not as close as you think. But look at the streets, there's no parking place. The fact that actually I found one is almost a miracle. So moving the car will be absolutely idiotic. And this is a less tended area of the old city of Tel Aviv. And here is the building, 51. As I understand, this is where Moshe used to live with his mother and his brother, and where he used to give the lessons, the trainings, the first training. As I said, this is not very tended part of Tel Aviv. But I believe that not long from now, all these houses will also be taken off in some way or another, and very huge buildings will be built here, because that's the way of the city now. Now I'll be taking you to a place where Moshe used to work after he finished, or during he was studying, or after he finished his studies in Tel Aviv. Also, few streets from here. I'll again turn off the video because I really don't have that much to say. I'll turn it on again when I arrive there. The British came here to Israel, to the land of Israel, after it was under the Ottoman Empire. As large as the Ottoman Empire had been, it wasn't that modernized. And one of the things that the British started to do in Israel was to build, to look at the land structure and to organize the maps of Israel. So, here, in this place, this building, the same building is doing the same thing nowadays. It hasn't changed. Not that building, not at the right, but in front of me, where there's a man on bicycle, was the center for mapping of the sun is not very good. The center for mapping, and Moshe used to work here in this place. The sun is actually to the east. I'll try to find a place with no sun. I have to cross the street, sorry. But you can see the buildings. As you can see nowadays, it's very the entry is very restricted, all the fences and everything. But that's a British building. And here Moshe used to work when he came to when he finished his studies at the Hebrew Gymnasium, הגimנסיה העברית. I don't think he worked here for quite a long time. I don't know for how long, but that's one of the places that he used to work. And from here, I'm going to Alexander Yanai. And for that, I have to move my car. I'll see you in a few minutes. See you. I'm getting closer to Alexander Yanai Street. This is the part of Tel Aviv that was built after State of Israel began, like in the 1950s. We just passed Yarkon River. It's not a river actually, it's a small stream, but we call it a river here in Israel. And these are the streets that Moshe had his Alexander Yanai lessons. Very small streets, most of them. Again, I'm looking for a parking place. It's not that easy, but I hope I'll find one. And this is Alexander Yanai Street. Just look at the street, and I'm looking for a parking place, and maybe I found one. This man is going out now. This is Alexander Yanai Street, part of the north side of Tel Aviv, the old north side of Tel Aviv. It was built at 1950s. My mother's family came to this area on 1950. She says it was mostly sand. Yeah. And Moshe came to Tel Aviv from Paris, London, actually from London, at about 1950. And at about 1955, 1954, he decided to work only with his method. After some time, he started giving the lessons to groups. And we had this studio here in Alexander Yanai Street. I'm crossing the street. I was asking Eli Vadler, who was his student, at what number did Moshe give his lessons, and he told me number 3 or number 2. Number 2 is actually a rebuilt building in the middle of the rebuilding, so there's no sign in here. And on number 3, I couldn't find a sign, so I'm not sure. But that's the street, and you can see how it looks nowadays, and it hadn't much changed from the days Moshe worked here. But this building, all the other buildings are exactly the same. Just let you see another place. This is the Nordo Boulevard, and it goes west to the beach. Yeah. From here you go westward, and the Mediterranean Sea is in front of you. It's almost 8 a.m. I'm going back to my house. If you want to join me for a few minutes in my car, see the streets of Tel Aviv, you're more than welcome. The city of Tel Aviv is waking up. People are taking their kids to the first day of summer school. Summer vacation had started today. Tel Aviv is always progressing, always moving forward. Behind that fence, it's the sea, but we can't see it because the fence is between us. As you can see, the traffic is running. People are running or walking. Sunday morning is a regular day in Israel. Every minute they have a red light. Well, I'd say good day to you all, and thank you for joining me for this very short tour of the history of Tel Aviv and the Moshe, especially Moshe. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll join us on the 1st of August to the 50 years celebration of Feldenkrais training that will be broadcasted from few places on earth: Mexico, Paris, Tel Aviv, Herzliya, Elkanah, Israel. See you. Good day to you all. Bye.